Yeah, let me record here.
Absolutely.
All right,
Okay. Folks, let's come back to order here for our last docket of the day. And as always, Ms. Albee, would you, excuse me, Ms. Dunn, read the docket first.
okay. Last docket PZ-19-003, application has been filed by JS Real Estate LLC for the approval of a preliminary subdivision plan for 30 lots on approximately 42.86 acres to be known as Poplar Ridge Place. The property is located at 3701 West Highway 22, Crestwood. The zoning is R2 Residential District.
All right, last one of the day. As Ms. Nunn stated, this is an application for a preliminary subdivision plan for 30 lots on 42.86 acres to be known as Poplar Ridge Place. The property is located at 3701 West Highway 22 in Crestwood. Crestwood is the mailing address. It's really in the Centerfield area. The existing zoning is R2. This is an aerial view of the property outlined here in red. There was a minor plat that was approved in August of 2018, which created two lots. It created a lot fronting Highway 22, which is highlighted here in purple, and then a second lot that encompasses we'll call it the main house, the homestead house that was located on the property. So when you look at these aerials, it really goes more like that you're looking at all of that area. Just keep that in mind. As you can see, the property is zoned R2 residential. You have Lockwood Estates to your right and then High Point subdivision to your left. History: in March of 2004, the Oldham County Planning Commission denied a request for a 61 single-family lot on 45 acres known as Grandeur Place. This was docket PZ-04005. The reason for denial on this was they felt that the proposed density was too high for the area and the plan would be better suited in LaGrange or Crestwood. And then also they denied it because they didn't have adequate sewer availability, and the treatment plant that it would go to was under sanction. So that is the history on that. So this is, it's kind of hard to see, but it's a long, narrow strip of land there. The applicant's proposing 30 lots on approximately 42.8 acres, known as Poplar Ridge Place. The plan outlines one retention basin and one detention basin, and the homes will be served by on-site septic systems. So the sewer issue is not an issue on this development. Again, it will be served by on-site septic systems. So you'll see highlighted here, there's the location of the retention basin and open space. This is the rear portion of the property. The plan also outlines 2.2 acres, of open space, and it has a note on the plan stating trees in the 2.2 acre open space will remain with the exception of the trees located within the limits of the proposed detention basin. So this is the location of the detention basin and also the area around it, which will be considered open space. A traffic assessment was completed for the proposed development and determined, based upon the volume of traffic generated by Poplar Ridge subdivision and the amount of traffic forecasted for the year 2020, there will be minimal impact to the existing highway network. No potential problems were identified during the assessment. Therefore, no mitigation is necessary to increase capacity as a result of this development. The plan meets all other zoning and subdivision regulations. So this is the west view of Highway 22. This is going towards Crestwood. This is the south view, so this is across the street. This is the east view, going towards Ballardsville, back into the Centerfield area. This is the west adjoining property owner, so as I showed you again on the minor plat, this would be the home to the track to the left of the entrance road going in. This is what we'll call the main house that was originally on the farm property. This is the east adjoining property. And then this is the area that's located behind the main house that will be developed. The proposed binding elements, the same standard for. The approval applies only to the plan presented at the January 22nd, 2019 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. Number 2, there shall be no subdivision of any lot into greater number of lots without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission. Number 3, all sinkholes shall be shown on the record plat. Number 4, the preliminary plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements at the time of approval, and no record plat will be approved until all standards are satisfied. And number 5, the cumulative phasing plan shall limit the number of building permits issued to 15 per year, beginning with the first record plat. So in summary, the applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary subdivision plan for Poplar Ridge Place comprised of 30 lots on approximately 42.8 acres. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No, other than, I think there were some changes that the developer addressed from TRC, and that as we move forward, all other statements from TRC would be held.
Amy, do you,
Yes, sir.
in absence of somebody from the school, do you know what schools these students from this subdivision would attend?
No, I do not.
Mr. Williams not here.
He left, and I must have put all 3 school capacity letters together, so I remember to bring them, but they're not in my folder, so I do not know. I don't want to assume, because this is right at the dividing line.
Yeah, Locust Grove and Crestwood. Or Centerfield,
it's in
yeah,
the-
yeah.
Centerfield Elementary, East Middle, and South Oldham High School.
Okay, so it would go to Camden Station Elementary, East Middle School, South Oldham High School. And I can put this on there so you can see it. 'Cause I think that was. Okay, the overhead's not one to work.
It's tired too.
But the total campus capacity was 116.95% or 117, which gives them the minimum of the
15.
15 per year at record plat. There you go. Sorry.
Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions? Seeing none, we'll move to presentation of the applicant representative.
What, sir?
Work the application. Mr. Baxter.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman. Again, I have Mr. Shum, Mr. Vincent, and Ms. Zimmerman, who may testify, so if I could get them sworn, please.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the
ma'am.
truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Now, you've been sworn twice, so.
So they'll tell the truth twice as much. Again, Barry Baxter, 117 West Main Street, LaGrange. I represent the applicant, JS Real Estate. We are here about Poplar Ridge Place. Again, this was copied verbatim out of Amy's staff report. We are proposing a 30-lot subdivision on 42.8 acres. The property is located at 3701 West Highway 22, and it's an R2 zone already on the property. Mr. Vincent was trying to drive us all crazy in drawing this map. It was very difficult for me to even get the slide on here, and it's sort of difficult to see. So when he gets up here and talks about this, I'm sure he can probably explain this a whole lot better than I can. So I'm going to let him come, and you may have better drawings too. I don't know.
Can we turn that 90 degrees? No?
Not from there. Yeah.
Okay. Let me throw this one in here.
Goes off.
Zoom in if you want certain areas. Zoom in.
Okay, but we can, on that, we can turn that 90 degrees, right?
No. We didn't turn it.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that's better. All right, Poplar Ridge Place is located on Kentucky Highway 22, just west of Kentucky Highway 393 in Centerfield, and it's an infill parcel located between High Point subdivision to the west and Lockwood Estate subdivision to the east. It consists of 42.8 acres. The property is zoned R2, which allows lots of 12,000 square feet. My clients feel the best use of this property is in larger estate-style lots of at least 1 acre in size, similar to both High Point and Lockwood Estate subdivisions. So in other words, the minimum lot size in High Point and Lockwood is 1 acre. We're proposing 30 lots on 42.8 acres. One proposed layout was given to us by a realtor showing 97 potential lots. So you can see that we have taken a drastically different approach to this proposed neighborhood. There is 5.9 acres in the road right-of-way, 2.2 acres in open space. This leaves us a net density of 1.15 lots per acre. And the minimum lot size is 12,000 square feet again, so that's 4 times greater than the minimum. Again, the property is zoned R2. The setbacks in the front are 35 feet, 7 and a total of 25 for the sides and 25 to the rear. On-site drainage will be accommodated by streets with curb and gutter flowing to the detention and retention basin that Amy showed earlier. All Oldham County stormwater quality requirements will be addressed in the construction plan phase of this development. All utilities are available, and water pressures and volumes have been confirmed by the Oldham County Water District that allows for the required fire protection for this development. Again, in summary, we're proposing 30 lots that are in keeping with the 1 acre size lots in both High Point and Lockwood subdivisions that surround us. And we believe that this is the best use for the property despite the R2 zoning that would allow for at least 3 times more the number of proposed lots we are proposing. Thank you.
Marty? Mr. Baxter?
So again, we're not requesting a rezoning of this property. We've got R2 residential zoning, 42 acres, 30 lots, and there's a single access point on West Highway 22 with no stub connection into any adjoining of the adjoining subdivisions. I copied these out of your all staff report. This is Amy's notes as it relates to conformance with the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance, and the flood damage prevention ordinance. And it appears that based upon those comments that we are in conformance with all of those particular elements. The plan outlines a 1 detention and retention basin, and the homes will be served by on-site septic. There's a small note about those trying to preserve trees where we can, but there will be a little bit of an issue doing that. If they're within the limits of the detention basin, they're going to have to be removed. We did have a traffic assessment was completed. I know Ms. Wall didn't have anything to say. I have Ms. Zimmerman here, and she's more than happy to answer any questions about the assessment that she performed. But that assessment showed that there's no mitigation necessary, as this is not going to pose a significant increase on Highway 22, and otherwise the plan meets all other zoning and subdivision regulations. There's Ms. Zimmerman's conclusions contained in her assessment that should have been part of your packet. The homes, again, are going to be between $430,000 and $600,000 constructed. Similar construction to the ones that we had in the last presentation, just photographs of some potential homes that could be built in this area. And again, I have a proposed motion to approve based upon the fact that we are in compliance with all of those regulations, which I'd like to distribute at this point if I could, Mr. Chairman. Otherwise, that would conclude our presentation.
All right. With that, is there anyone here that would like to speak in support of this application? Yes, ma'am. Come forward, we'll get you sworn in and then get you name and address. Ms. Nunn, if you could swear her in, please.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Come up a little bit closer to the microphone if you would.
Good afternoon. I'm Grace Temple. My husband and I Tom, live at 3605 West Highway 22, which adjoins this property in question on the east side and the south side. So it's semi-surrounds our property. We commend Mr. Shum on revamping this whole idea. The other proposal was just simply intolerable. We have some areas of concern. One is the water drainage, and I know that has been questioned and re-questioned, but for the people that are down below us, I think that is going to be a problem. One of our concerns is the new amount of traffic that will be on Highway 20.
Let me just interrupt you. Say, are you speaking in support of this application? We'll have an opportunity, or you will have an opportunity to testify or bring up those kind of issues here in just a minute. But what I was asking for, if there was anyone here that was speaking in support of this particular application. So I'm kind of hearing maybe some concerns that would be more
I
appropriate
have
under testimony.
concerns, yes, sir, I do.
Okay, all right, so let me just say, why don't we hold off just a minute unless,
Okay.
and then you can come back when we get into the testimony of those that have questions or concerns.
Okay?
Because that, you know, I mean, it sounded like when you first came up, you said you were supportive, and so that's why, you know, let you continue on this, so.
I am more supportive than I was.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you. All right.
Faint praise is better than no praise, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right. All right, now, I'll let you get back to your seat too quick. We'll open up now for questioning of the applicant and those opposing the application. Wait a minute, let's see. Yeah, you can come back forward and continue. I just wanted to, we kind of have to do this according to our standard. and so-
I understand.
So you go ahead and let us know what the concerns are.
Okay, well, my concern about the water is for the people down below me, and I can tell you that when I walk through my backyard on a rainy day, it's slosh, slosh. But I'm at the top of the hill. Our concern is of the amount of traffic. If you have 30 homes, you're going to have 60 cars at least. And it's going to throw more traffic, and I can guarantee you that when I try to turn out of my driveway, turn left off of 22 on Highway 53, some days it's just, I wait 5-10 minutes just to get out, depending on what time of day you go. So I think that is certainly something that should be considered, as well as the curve that comes out 22 that is going to be approximately at the edge of this property. And we've had several accidents. We had somebody in our front yard on Christmas Day, people across the road in Green Roses. Now, it's not multiple accidents, but it is a concern. And they have, yes, lowered the speed limit to 45. Very few people go 45. My major concern is the amount of where the construction entrance and the driveway into the property is going to be, which is going to be right on the edge of our property line. I'm not sure how close to the edge. It's difficult to tell from this map, but it looks as if it's right there. I'm concerned is I don't know how you build a road, but do you dig it out? Do you add to it and make it higher? Are we going to have runoff from that? I know they have stated that there are gutters, if you will, along the edge of there, but are we going to have runoff from that onto our property, from their road? The other concern I have is where the road turns behind our property, how that's going to be constructed. There's a huge gully right there. I don't know if it's going to be filled in, what the construction process is going to be, and what impact this is going to have on our property. Is this road going to be 25 feet wide, 26 feet wide? Is there any buffer zone on either side of it? These are all questions that I have. What is the easement, I guess you would call that? And also, out of that, then what is the watershed going to be from this road? Because it obviously is, my driveway goes downhill to the highway. And where is the water going to go there? Is it going to go in that ditch, which Also, there's an existing culvert when this was proposed several years ago that is over to near the High Point area, and that was to be an entrance onto that development at the time. Is that going to remain there? Is it going to be destroyed? Those are some of my questions and concerns.
Okay, all right, thank you. And let me, Mr. Vincent or Mr. Baxter, do you want to address some of those? Well,
Bob Vincent again. There were a lot of questions there. I'll try to answer them the best that I can. In the TRC, the comments from CW Seymour concerning the entrance and runoff, it's very clear there is no additional runoff allowed into the road right-of-way from this entrance. So that situation will be taken care of. We'll have some manner of detention so that there is no increase into the road right-of-way. As far as Ms. Temple's property is concerned, the entrance, right now, if you look at the topography, you can see as you come off the road, it goes up at a fairly steep angle. So the entrance will be constructed to where it'll have to go down at least at 2% for 50 feet off of the road. So that will provide the low point. It's at the top of the hill, so probably we will break the water in both the east and the west directions. Again, that'll be reviewed by the highway department, and they'll help make that determination if they want it to go one way or the other. I don't anticipate that there would be any runoff from our right-of-way that would go to Ms. Temple's property. If you look on your preliminary plat, you'll see that we've made it 80 foot wide coming back through there. So the center line of the road would be 40 foot off of her property line. You have a 22 foot wide road with curb and gutter. So the edge of the curb would be somewhere between 27, 28 feet from the property line. So she was concerned about a buffer between the edge of the road and her property. So yes, there will be, you know, a little bit less than a 30-foot buffer. I think that was all her questions.
okay. All right, is there anyone else here that would like to, yes, sir, get you to come forward? And let me ask, is there anybody else that wants to speak in, okay, has testimony? Let's get everybody sworn in at the same time, if we could. Okay, Ms. Nunn?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, yes, sir.
Neil Deves, 5501 High Point Drive. I'm on the High Point Board for a homeowners association, which technically is not an association, but a group. But I do have some concerns, and Mr. Shum was very nice to try to address those at a meeting that we had previously. One is, as I said, the entrance to the subdivision. If you've ever tried to get out onto 22 after there has been an accident on 71, you know it's near impossible to get out within a 5-minute time span. We'll have 3 subdivisions all entering Highway 22 within a 200-foot span. It would be the new subdivision, Westwood, which is across the street, and High Point. Further east of us, you have Lockwood subdivision. So you have 4 subdivisions within a quarter of a mile, all entering the same location, of which there is also a curve, which makes it a little tricky when people are accelerating around the curve, when they start to see that straight stretch. And that is a concern that we have with that. Another concern I had was, could we put the plot up of the property?
Should be back in a second, but
That's good. Thank you very much. If you look at this, High Point is at the top of the page, and if you go approximately 1/3 of the way in from the right towards the left, you'll see in High Point subdivision, there is a narrow area where there is a street that dead ends into this existing property. We would really like assurance, and I know Mr. Shum mentioned it to us before, that they have no intention of connecting to that street, if I'm correct. But we would like assurance, or at least have it known on record, that we do have a concern with that. Because of highway construction and building materials coming in and out, The region from that street up to where I live at 5501 is a steep grade. And the county maintains those roads at this point in time. And if there is heavy construction equipment on those roads, it would be the county's responsibility, I would think, to continue to maintain those, which would be an added expense to the county. You mentioned earlier that nobody wants a subdivision right in their backyard. Well, I mean, he's right, but right now I have a cattle loading pen in my backyard. And that's what was part of the farm property. And it doesn't bother me that it's there, and it won't bother me too much that there's a subdivision there, because where I'm located, it's much larger lots. I'm up close to the original house, so that wouldn't affect us at all. But those folks that are in Lockwood that will have property running continually down the street in that straight stretch, I think many of those folks might be extremely disappointed. But I appreciate your consideration and your time, and thank you very much.
All right, who'd like to go next? Magistrate Hawkins or? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Rick Brown. I'm at 3716 McKinley Lane. Would it be possible to put this photo up? This promo? I'm not sure if I have it upside down or not yet. I'll let you know. Oh, okay. Thank you. So that places it north to south. I have two concerns. I'm at 3716 Mickadee Lane, which I am actually on that dead-end street that was referred to earlier. And I own a 2-acre lot there, a house and then a pond as well. So I have two concerns: drainage, watershed, and then I'd like to at least speak to the commission on if we can, and voice my concern about turning that into a second egress for this property. That comes off of a hill and right down through three different houses, and that will pretty much it will extremely decrease the value or quality of life for my family in that area as a dead-end street, not a cul-de-sac, but it truly is a dead-end street. So that's something I would like to voice as my concern, that as the commission looks at this approval, that it be at a point with the 1-acre lots that it doesn't require a secondary egress or exit. That's one point. The other is the watershed and runoff. I am next to an area that's approximately 10 acres. It looks like it's been clear cut approximately, I'd say 15 to 18 years ago. It's on secondary growth. There's two along my property. There's two springs, natural springs that run continually. And that area right there across from me on this proposed area is on a crown. So it's crowned in the top. The majority of the watershed runs off onto me, back through next to my leach bed, down through my pond, and then on down through onto the stream. So my concerns are how we're going to, with the north basin, it's north of that, how we're going to route that so additional water isn't run onto me and filtered through me. Like I said, I realize they're acre lots. I realize they're going to put septic tanks in there, or septic systems, excuse me, but I'm aware of how the septic systems currently work in our soil type and minimalization of topsoil in High Point, so I'm concerned about that. But how will we be able to re-divert that water north, which would actually be uphill to that basin, or south, how is it going to be? So there's not more and more runout off on me, and if not, then I'm going to have to come back, I guess myself personally, and create some sort of berm and push that water in a different direction. So those are the two concerns I have regarding the north basin and the watershed and runoff, and then just the egress from the standpoint of if that would be considered as a secondary point of exit and entry. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want me to speak my name again?
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
Magistrate
One-
Hawkins.
Is this okay?
It's got a little reflection, but I think we can see it.
Okay. I just wanted to show you, I have a couple things to say, but I wanted to show you all, this is where it's at, and we're talking about the blind curve and hitting the straightaway. So this is panned out from what you were saying earlier. This straightaway, yes, cars go entirely too fast. You can see these, all of these other streets with all of these other houses in here, all trying to turn right if you're coming from this direction to go into Louisville, or left out of here to go into Louisville. And then if you're turning this way out of any of these streets, here, down here, or North Camden, you might as well forget it. So when we're talking about adding more homes, I know you think, well, it's only 30, so it's only 60 more cars. But if we continue to add just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit without doing I think a more comprehensive study, then it's just making the problem worse. And if you've ever tried to pull out of there or come home at night, it's not the rural sort of living that we all have moved here for at one point or another. There was another statement that was made by saying that they were 3 or 4 times less than what's allowed. And I just wanted to, this is from the, you can see this is R2, that says R2 right there. And this is on septic, so this is without sanitary sewers. So this is minimum lot area 1 acre, right? 1 acre if you are on septic. Am I understanding that correctly?
correct.
Okay. So it's not 3 or 4 times, it's not, I'm doing this great thing, I'm making it 3 or 4 times less than what's required, because it's, 42 acres and 30 lots, it's just, it's not 3 or 4 times, it's, do that math, 42 acres, 32 lots. So do you see what I'm saying? It was stated right at the beginning that we're doing 3 or 4 times.
Well, I think, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I
Sure.
think what they were talking about was if under R2, you can, and if with sewers, he could have 90-some lots there. And so that's where I think they were coming up with those numbers. If there was, if you have R2 and are on sewers, then you can have that kind of density. So I believe that's what they were talking about. I don't want to speak
But
for.
sewers don't go there. It's septic.
Well,
There are sewers in the general area, so the proposal that was denied in the past was going to be on sewers. They are in the general region, and they could be connected.
Sewers in High Point?
Lockwood Estates.
Lockwood Estates. Yes.
Currently, either way, currently it's septic. And, right?
Well, the proposal is for septic.
Correct.
Not sewers.
So it's not, I would just argue that it's 3 or 4 times better. It is septic. I feel like it would be a lot more expensive for them to put sewers in. I don't know the cost. But I just wanted to argue the fact that it was 3 or 4 times better than what it could be. And I'm just saying 42 acres, 30 lots, it's not 3 or 4 times better. I just wanted to challenge that a little bit. Does that make sense? Okay. If you do live in High Point or Lockwood, talking about the retention basins, I would like to see a plan for runoff because there are areas in both of those neighborhoods that do flood. And I talked about the blind curve east of the property. I would also like to see an environmental study done. I don't know if it's required for this, for only 30 homes or 30 lots. But at some point, an environmental study in the area needs to be done because of the flooding that is so prevalent in the area. I would request that before building more in the area along 22. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, anyone else? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Temple. Sure, you come on back up. No, well, come on back up, please.
I don't have a clear determination on the difference between a retention and a detention, Mr. Urban.
I can give you the simple answer. It's like when you were in school. If you were bad, you were detained, but then you were let go. And if in
I was never detained.
okay, Jim, when Jim was bad, you got detention, which means they held you back but then let you go. So a detention basin lets the water go. A retention basin actually retains it. keeps it. So it's always a pond or some body of water. Water can flow into it and can flow out of it, but it's always wet.
So the pond that is existing there will become the retention.
More than likely.
That is.
It is the
that is-
retention.
yes.
And a new detention is going to be constructed.
Yes, so there is both of them, a retention basin, which is the existing pond, and a detention basin, which is proposed further back in the property. So they're employing both of those. So the existing pond will keep holding water.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right, we'll now move into the questioning of the applicant and those opposing the application by the commission. Excuse me. Commissioners, any questions? Mr. McWilliams?
Yes, sir. Bob, did I hear you correctly that curb and gutter is going to take care of any water that you think that Ms. Temple was concerned about coming onto her property?
Well, that will keep the majority of the increase in runoff in the street. And then it'll go into a catch basin system.
Okay.
And then it'll run into some kind of subsurface detention. Again, let me reiterate, what C.W. Seymour said in his TRC comments was that there is no increase in runoff allowed to the road right-of-way. So
So
whatever
basically, that
method that we
means
use
she would get no more once this is developed than she does now.
in the road right-of-way, that's correct, yes.
Right away. Okay. Sir, I am sorry, I did not get your name, but you had several questions. Could you sort of address some of those?
Well, yeah, his questions were a little bit more technical in nature, where we will be addressing specific runoff areas in the construction plan phase of the project. But I will assure you, as will Mr. Silliman, that the stormwater ordinance that is in place now, not only are we controlling the stormwater runoff, but we're also treating the water quality. So these detention basins are much more complex than what everybody is used to. So we can't compartmentalize, if you will, for one particular lot and say that there won't be necessarily an increase in runoff on his lot, but the total runoff for the development as it exists today will not be increased after it is entirely developed.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Brown? I'm not sure it did.
Yeah, but if that increases.
Well, Mr. Brown, we need to get you to come back to the microphone, please.
Rick Brown, 3716 McKinney. I understand what the gentleman's saying. My question is, the overall runoff may not change, but if it increases on myself and the two other lots, besides my 2 acres or the other 2 neighbors I have, that's going to directly go into their leach beds, which in fact directly floods those, which in turn takes that leach brown water that hasn't completed a leach bed, runs it into my pond and into your downward streams. So I understand the overall may not increase, but if it increases in a certain percentage in a certain area, we're going to have issues of leach bed flooding in the High Point side, where it's very close now because that water floods right into those. Over time, you can walk back along there and see where it's taking its natural channels to different leach beds.
Okay.
Floods the leach bed, water runs, in fact, our neighbors runs into my pond and then on out into your waterway. So that's my concern of how are you going to prevent surface water, any increase to surface water. I know what comes off of secondary growth. This is off of streets and flatness. How do we help curve that water so we can keep the water quality high that's going back into our rivers, streams, ponds, things of that nature?
Any remedy for that?
What we will attempt to do, and again, I don't know, without looking at this in great detail, and I'm not even exactly sure where his particular lot is, but what we will do on the perimeter of the property is there will probably be ditches that will be constructed that is to take the water into the detention basin and the retention basin. Now, if he's in a low area there, where topographically it's impossible, then again, we have to fall back on the ordinance that we have in place that states that the total runoff for the development can't exceed what's there now.
You're talking ditches to catch the water before it gets on Mr. Brown's property, as where you were talking about a berm, same?
Yeah, something to prevent that.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, sir?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Douglas.
I guess let me start with our county engineer and MS4 coordinator. I have a question for him. Our previous county engineer and MS4 coordinator always worked with developers when it came to cul-de-sac bulbs, I guess that's what you would call them.
Okay.
The downgrade.
Yes.
Anything excessive than 4% or whatever it is.
Correct.
Have you looked at these plans? Have you seen some of the grades that's on there?
Well, since those are not construction plans,
Correct.
they're not final. I know the TRC comments did address the downslope that's been an issue. So yes, that has been recognized as something to be addressed with final construction.
Well, based on your office, the same fundamental format will be used as far as like the catch basins at the beginning of those cul-de-sacs will catch that water before it
Those
leaves?
were the, if I recall correctly from the TRC minutes, those were the comments made. But I think we'll continue to work with the developer, Mr. Vincent, to make sure it is fully adequate.
Will that eliminate some of the runoff going down to that grade
Well, again, it's hard to say, but
without their plan?
conceptually, I guess you could see that if all that runoff were, and I don't know that it is, but if all that runoff were going across to someone's property and you split it with a road and had curb and gutter, then theoretically you could be taking that away.
Right.
However, it could already be a high point through that road area and you're not changing much. Again, it's hard to say, but yes, there is that potential.
Right. Okay, that's all I have.
All right, any additional questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move into rebuttal, evidence, and cross-examination by the applicant. Mr. Baxter, you have anything, sir?
I don't have anything, sir.
Okay. Does anyone else on the opposition have rebuttal, evidence, or cross-examination? Anybody that has spoke? Okay. All right, we're down to final statement of the opposition. Is there anyone that testified or had questions of the opposition? Do you all have any final statements you'd like to make? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Deeves?
This may not sound like opposition, but I mean, I'd rather have a subdivision like Mr. Schaum's proposing than totally undeveloped land that we have in back of us, and it's got to be better than a cattle loading pen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Baxter, final statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, yesterday, as I was getting ready to put together 2 PowerPoints, I was looking at Amy's staff report, and I emailed her yesterday and told her she made a mistake. And she gave you a corrected first page to the Poplar Ridge staff report, only to point out to me, I guess turnabout is fair play, that in the proposed motion that I gave you, I copied and pasted and made the same mistake. So, in any event, I appreciate your all's time today. It is 6:20. Thankfully, I am not responsible totally for the fact that you're still here at 6:20, since you didn't get started with me, I think, until about 3:15. We are asking you all to approve this proposal for Poplar Ridge Place. It is in conformance with the zoning and subdivision regulations. There are no variances or waivers. We believe that it does comply with the comprehensive plan. We do agree with the proposed binding elements that were tendered in your staff report, and we would appreciate an affirmative vote. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Baxter, thank you. And with that, find my paperwork here. Docket PZ 19003 has been completed. And Mr. Urban and Mr. Carter, would you outline what's being requested on this docket, please?
Sure. It is a request for approval of a preliminary subdivision plan called Poplar Ridge Place. It's pretty straightforward. They're not asking for any waivers or variances from our requirements. There are, as always, proposed motions for either approval or denial in your staff report, starting on page 2. On page 3, there are 5 binding elements. I'll read them out loud just so you can incorporate them in a motion if you care to approve this development. The approval applies only to the plan presented at the January 22nd, 2019 Oldham County Planning Commission public hearing. Number 2 is that there shall be no subdivision of any lot into greater number of lots without review by the Oldham County Planning Commission. Number 3 is all sinkholes shall be shown on the record plat. Number 4, the preliminary plan must comply with all established federal, state, and county ordinances and requirements at the time of the approval, and no record plat will be approved until all standards are satisfied. Number 5 is that the cumulative phasing shall limit the number of building permits issued to 15 per year, beginning with the first record plat. Now, in all the testimony and conversations, I've tried to see if there were any other potential binding elements, and a number of questions were raised, but none of them, in my opinion, led to any further binding elements. Some of the subjects are answered actually in construction plans, and so those would be the ones that I would, those 5 that are in your staff report would be the only binding elements.
Mr. Carter, anything you need to add? No. All right. Commissioners, you've heard Mr. Urban outline what's being requested here on this docket. What's the pleasure of the commission? Mr. McWilliams.
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to act on this application, but I thought it might be fitting that since this is his last commission hearing, and this is the last item on the docket, that Mr. Horton might want to do this.
Okay.
Well, I would,
I appreciate that, but, you go ahead.
well, but
That's my parting gift to you. Yeah, well,
what of
that's
all
better
of-
than some parting gifts I've gotten.
Well, and of course, the applicant has submitted a proposed motion for approval, and you, as always, can rely on that if you care to. So I was going to tee it up so it was easier for you, Jan, to be put on the spot, but apparently you've lobbied it back.
Well, Mr. Chairman, since Mr. Horton has chosen to wuss out on this,
Okay.
I move that we approve the preliminary subdivision plan for Poplar Ridge Place, Poplar Ridge. Thank you very much. I think it it complies with the objectives of the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance subdivision regulations as provided to us in our packets. And it also, the proposed motion provided to us by Mr. Baxter includes some other reasons that it would be good to approve it. And I would also like to add to include all of the proposed binding elements into that.
Okay. Why don't you read those into the record if you don't mind, sir?
I'd be happy to.
Those.
Mr. Horton, you want to read these? Motion to approve docket PZ 19003, the revised preliminary plan for Ballard Woods, Section 5, because
Help.
it conforms with the Oldham County. Well, would somebody give me the right dadgone thing to read? Okay, it conforms with the Oldham County Future Land Use Map 2014, which predicts that this tract shall be single-family residential. It is in conformance with all zoning and subdivision regulations, no requested variances or waivers. Complies with objectives goal LU-2 of the comprehensive plan by encouraging the preservation and development of a range of housing opportunities, and objectives LU-2-1, establish neighborhood development guidelines that promote connectivity between neighborhoods. The applicant has agreed to the incorporation of all proposed binding elements. The approval is contingent upon the strict adherence to the binding elements adopted on January 22nd, 2019, Planning Commission meeting.
All righty. Mr. Carter, is that adequate? Yes, sir. All right. With that, do we have a second? I'd like to second. Okay, Mr. Horton. Recognize him as seconding it on the last day of the last meeting. All right, yes, sir. All right, any discussion on the motion to approve the docket on, docket PZ 19003, which is a preliminary subdivision plan on 30 lots? Any discussion? All right, Ms. Nunn, if you would, let's take the vote. This is a
right.
motion to approve.
Mr. Horton? Mr. McWilliams?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Bonet?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Douglas? Mr. Falvey?
Yes.
Mr. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Halfling?
Yes.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes.
Mr. Klingelfuss?
Yes.
And Mr. Neal?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, the motion on docket PZ 19003 has been approved on a vote of 12-0. And before we adjourn here, I'd just like to thank everybody and staff particularly to be in here from 9 o'clock till 6:30. So this has been a long day, but I think we got a lot accomplished. So we were scheduled to have under other business election of officers. Greg King could not be here today. He's vice chair. And so we're going to hold that up until our February meeting. And I assume we'll have a meeting in February. Salvi, is that?
We don't have any applications yet, but most likely you will have a zoning map amendment for commercial property.
So we'll do that in February. if
Most
that's
likely.
Okay with everybody. Anything else that we need? We are going to have SRC meeting Thursday night, correct?
Do we have to?
Good day, man.
No, actually, we really haven't had any time to do any
I'm not
further
doing any
investigation.
preparation
All right.
for it.
It would be best that we postpone it.
We'll postpone it. All right. Thank you. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.
We did. I think we did.